Can you believe that back in 1935, when most cars were boxy, high-riding and body-on-frame, there was already a vehicle in America that looked like a modern minivan? With its unibody construction, rear mid-engine layout, lounge-style interior, and futuristic aerodynamic design, the Stout Scarab was truly decades ahead of its time. But like many great inventors, William Bushnell Stout, the man behind the Scarab, went too far, too soon. His visionary car wasn't embraced. In fact, it was mocked, and only a handful were handcrafted before fading into obscurity. So why did such a groundbreaking vehicle fail so completely? And why do car collectors, engineers, and historians today call it the world's first minivan? Join us as we uncover the story of the Stout Scarab, an automotive icon rejected in its time, but never truly forgotten. Behind this car from the future was a man just as extraordinary, William Bushnell Stout. If the Scarab defied every design convention of its time, Stout was the dreamer bold enough to imagine it first. Before entering the world of automobiles, Stout had already made his mark in American aviation. He was the visionary behind the Ford Trimotor, the first all-metal airplane and the original flying bus of commercial air travel. His life philosophy was summed up in one phrase: simplicate and add lightness. Stout believed that cars, like airplanes, shouldn't just be about moving from point A to point B. They should be spaces for living, working, and enjoying life. He was deeply unsatisfied with cars that were cramped, mechanical, and single-purpose. After parting ways with Ford's subsidiary, he founded the Stout Motor Car Company in the early 1930s with a daring goal: to build the car of the future. A car unshackled by engineering norms or conservative market tastes. A car that reflected his own spirit, creative, independent, and ahead of its time. One of the most revolutionary aspects of the Stout Scarab was its monocoque body construction, a concept that was almost unthinkable in 1935. At a time when nearly every car was built using body-on-frame construction, where the body was mounted on a separate steel chassis like a truck, the Scarab completely eliminated the traditional frame. Instead, its entire body was built as a single structural shell, serving as both exterior skin and load-bearing frame. The benefits were significant: dramatically reduced weight, greater structural rigidity, improved noise insulation, and enhanced safety. Without a bulky frame underneath, the floor was flatter, allowing for a far more spacious interior, an incredibly rare trait in cars of that era. But this came with major technical challenges. A true monocoque design required precise welding techniques, lightweight yet strong materials, and sophisticated production methods, none of which were common or affordable in the 1930s. Manufacturing costs were exponentially higher than conventional body-on-frame cars. Still, that bold decision made the Scarab decades ahead of its time. It would take nearly 30 years before unibody construction became the norm in modern automotive engineering. And if it took the automotive industry nearly 30 years to accept unibody construction, the Scarab's appearance shocked the public instantly. Even today, the car still looks bizarre. But picture yourself in 1935, when most cars were square, upright, and had separate fenders and towering grills. Then suddenly, a gleaming rounded metal cocoon with no front hood and curved glass rolled down the street. Many at the time called it a car from another planet. William Stout's design was inspired by the ancient Egyptian scarab beetle, a symbol of rebirth and creativity. The body was entirely rounded to improve aerodynamics, a concept just emerging in aviation and virtually non-existent in car design at the time. The front end was incredibly short. The windshield curved and flowed seamlessly into the roof. Large side windows followed the vehicle's contours, creating a smooth, uninterrupted line. There was no massive grille or protruding fenders. The Scarab looked like a single, unified object in motion, completely alien to anything on the road. Naturally, the public was stunned. Many thought it was ugly, strange, or just plain wrong. And that was just the exterior. Stepping inside, anyone already bewildered by the Scarab's bizarre looks would have been even more confused. Because its interior didn't resemble any car they'd ever seen, it felt more like a living room rolling down the street. William Stout didn't just want to build a car, he wanted to create a mobile living space. The Scarab wasn't designed merely to carry people, but to serve them in every way possible. Inside, you wouldn't find the usual rows of forward-facing seats. Instead, the cabin was laid out like a lounge, a rear bench, front seats that could swivel to face each other, and a small center table. All of this was set atop a completely flat floor, an extremely rare feature at the time. Large wraparound windows bathed the space in natural light, creating a bright and relaxing atmosphere. No center tunnel, no partitions, no confinement. The Scarab was about freedom, comfort, and human-centered design. It wasn't until the 1980s that similar layouts appeared in minivans like the Chrysler Voyager. The Scarab didn't just shock with its looks and interior, it also left engineers scratching their heads with its powertrain layout, a rear mid-engine placed directly behind the passenger cabin. This was a bold move, considering that nearly all cars in the 1930s featured front-mounted engines with rear-wheel drive. The Scarab was powered by a Ford Flathead V8, 221 cubic inches, one of the most popular and reliable engines of the era. But William Stout didn't mount it up front as expected. Instead, he installed it behind the cabin, above the rear axle, driving the rear wheels via a short drive shaft and a 3-speed manual transmission. This configuration had real advantages. The car's center of gravity was centralized, improving balance and handling. There was no need for a long drive shaft or a tunnel running through the cabin, allowing for a completely flat floor. The front compartment was freed up entirely for luggage, an idea that only modern EVs have recently embraced. But it wasn't without flaws. Placing the engine in an enclosed space behind passengers led to heat issues in the cabin. Engine noise was hard to isolate, and accessing the powertrain for maintenance was tricky. Still, it remains one of the boldest and most forward-thinking layouts of the 1930s. With such bold ideas, the Scarab should have been a hit in the automotive world. But the reality was quite the opposite. It failed miserably on the market. Why? First, it was simply too expensive. In 1935, a Stout Scarab cost nearly $5,000, equivalent to about $110,000 today. In contrast, a standard Ford V8 sold for just $500 to $600. That price gap was far too wide for most consumers to consider. Second, it was hand-built. Each Scarab was made almost entirely by hand, custom-built per order. There was no standardized assembly line, no mass production capability. This not only drove up costs, but also made each car a one-off, difficult to repair, with no interchangeable parts. Third, and perhaps most important, the market simply wasn't ready. People were used to classic car shapes, long hoods, low tails, and interiors that looked like cars. The Scarab broke all those rules. It was seen as a freak, the product of a dreamer rather than a practical engineer. William Stout once hoped to produce hundreds of Scarabs each year, but in the end, only about 9 were ever built during its lifetime. But each surviving example is now considered a living relic, not just of a unique car, but of a dream that was far ahead of its time. Some Scarabs are on display at prestigious automotive museums, like the Detroit Historical Museum or the Peterson Automotive Museum in California. Others are held by private collectors, meticulously preserved and occasionally showcased at events like the Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance or Amelia Island. A few are still in running condition, gliding smoothly and stylishly as if they never left the 1930s. But due to their rarity and historical significance, most current owners choose display over driving. Estimated value for each Scarab today is in the millions of dollars, yet virtually none are for sale. To car enthusiasts, the Scarab isn't just a vehicle. It's the embodiment of what it means to have a vision far ahead of its time. Even after the original Scarab failed, William Stout never gave up on his dream. After World War II, he returned with an even more ambitious project, the Scarab Experimental 1946, a vehicle that pushed design and technology far beyond its time. This new Scarab featured an all-aluminum unibody, lighter and more durable than steel. It had a panoramic glass roof, pillarless windows, and hidden headlights, all features that wouldn't become common for decades. Most stunning of all were its power-operated sliding doors, something unheard of then and still rare today. The suspension system used self-leveling air springs, allowing the car to adjust ride height based on terrain, a concept not widely commercialized until the 1990s. Inside, the lounge-style layout returned, with swivel chairs, folding tables, and expansive natural lighting. The Scarab Experimental 1946 wasn't just a car, it was a vision of future mobility. Sadly, the world once again wasn't ready. There were no investors, no distribution network, and above all, no market prepared for a car that looked like it came from the year 2000. Looking back through automotive history, few cars resemble the Stout Scarab, a vehicle ignored in its time, yet honored by the world nearly a century later. What the Scarab left behind wasn't just technical innovation. Its true legacy was a human-centered design philosophy, something almost non-existent in the automotive world back then. While other car makers chased bigger engines or flashier styling, William Stout asked a simpler question: is the person inside comfortable? That question would eventually reshape the future of automotive design. Today, designers, engineers, and historians often call the Scarab the world's first concept car, not because it previewed a specific production model, but because it was a statement, a vehicle not built to please the market, but to rethink the market altogether. Design institutions like the Art Center College of Design and the Royal College of Art still reference the Scarab in lessons about the cost of innovation. That sometimes a brilliant idea can fail, not because it's wrong, but because it arrives too early. The Scarab didn't immediately create a new category of car, but it did introduce an entirely new way of thinking about cars, and that may be the greatest legacy William Stout ever left behind. The Stout Scarab didn't succeed when it was built, but that doesn't make it any less great. On the contrary, it stands as proof that sometimes an idea fails not because it's wrong, but because the world simply isn't ready yet. William Stout didn't build a car for the masses. He built a statement about freedom, about human-centered design, and about vision unconstrained by industrial norms. And because of that, even though fewer than 10 were ever made, the Scarab still lives on in the hearts of car lovers everywhere. What do you think of the Scarab? If it were reborn today with modern technology, could it finally succeed in the 21st century? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of forgotten machines that deserve to be remembered. We'll see you in the next video.